I was born in the year of independence, and thereby in the year that Angola's civil war also began. Practically every one of us has suffered a loss in the family, a victim of the war, of the conflict. My mother died in 1992 and my father in 94, which left us with our eldest brother as the head of the family. He worked as a journalist for freedom of the press. In 1999 he was murdered, tragically. At that time, feelings of revenge filled our hearts. Though other feelings also filled us. After our brother's death, we placed a plaque on his grave, which read, "God forgive his murderers, even though we do not know them personally. Make the blood sacrificed be joined with the blood of the many other victims of this Angolan conflict, so that they may finally become the seeds of peace, of an authentic reconciliation amongst Angolans."
Uma reconciliação autêntica entre os angolanos.
The story of Domingos' family, a young lawyer from Luanda, is similar to that of many thousand Angolan families. His generation is barely beginning to learn to live in peace. Even children continue to draw pictures of battle and play war games. Located in southwest Africa, this country's history is marked primarily by periods of conflict. The fight with slave traders, the 14-year War of Independence, as well as the nearly 30-year civil war which ended in 2002. Work for peace, reconciliation and justice remain a challenge that continues to confront Angolans. Angola is the fifth largest country on the African continent after Sudan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Algeria and Libya. Its population of 16 million inhabitants includes 10 ethnic groups. Paradoxically, Angola is one of Africa's richest countries, as well as one of the poorest. It has the largest oil deposits south of the Sahara, as well as diamond, iron ore, copper, gold, phosphate and uranium, and yet around 70% of the population live for under $1 a day, mainly from agriculture. The first European to reach this land in 1482 was Portuguese explorer Diego Cao. Portuguese merchants traded ivory and gold with the locals to begin with, gradually expanding Portugal's power and influence, and in 1574 forced its rulers to recognize Lisbon's supremacy. The slave trade began soon after and involved large-scale deportations mainly to Brazil, Dominicana and Cuba, gaining Luanda the inauspicious position of one of the continent's largest slave transshipment ports.
A categorização dessas populações.
Segregation of the population came down to the Portuguese dividing the population into locals, assimilated, and civilized. Locals were Africans with no Portuguese education. People could pass from the local to the assimilated category by reaching 4th grade, as well as by adopting Portuguese customs. In 1975, around 90% of Angolans were illiterate.
analfabetos.
Angola's War of Independence began in 1961, lasted 14 years and ended in 1975, when Angola became one of Africa's last countries to gain independence. Shortly afterwards, however, a civil war began between the MPLA government forces and guerrillas of the FNLA and UNITA. The Marxists MPLA party, founded by Agostinho Neto, Angola's first president, was supported by the USSR, Cuba and China, as well as by the remaining countries of the Eastern Bloc. However, UNITA, founded by Jonas Savimbi, was supported by the Republic of South Africa, Zaire and the USA. For nearly 30 years, Angola was yet another pawn in the Cold War.
To była wojna ideologiczna.
It was an ideological war between two worlds. It was a war for wealth and influence, for status here, for oil. As somebody said, had the country been poor, the war here would definitely not have lasted for so many years.
My father died in the war. I also lost a brother. We only found his skeleton. We don't know how he died, but we do know that he was taken away from us to work with the opposition party. Only later did we realize that being 16 years old, he had been recruited into the army because military service was compulsory from 16 onwards.
I witnessed friends unexpectedly disappear. People die in abominable conditions, inhuman situations, because war leads to all kinds of evils: hunger, poverty, disorder, dishonesty, a breakup of family unity. War brings no positives, only negative consequences.
The negative consequences of war also left their mark on religious freedom. Angola was the first sub-Saharan country to have received Christianity, whilst the first local was christened in 1491. With the communist MPLA takeover of power and breakout of the Civil War, difficult times began for the nearly 500-year-old Angolan Catholic Church. All schools were nationalized in 1975, seminaries were closed, Catholic radio stations liquidated, religious processions were forbidden, and the country was flooded with atheist propaganda.
Quando se deu a guerra de libertação em 1961, as autoridades
When the War of Independence began in 1961, the Portuguese authorities imprisoned many priests who were sympathetic towards the territory's independence. The Catholic Church and the majority of Christians soon became the people's advocate in matters related to the achievement of independence.
When we were colony, the government of Portugal did not permit the church to interfere in the social or political world. When the Marxism came, did not permit the church to interfere in any place, neither education, neither health, neither social work. We could not have gatherings outside of the church, and then we had to fight to maintain our rights of celebration. And the people never went away.
For example, we saw young people put their lives on the line in order to carry the catechism. encourage youth groups, in spite of the many dangers and suspicions that people gathering aroused in the war situation at the time. We met people who, finding themselves in such situations, left everything they had at home. They went to church to pray, in the knowledge that there they would find the strength for everything that is to come, to face all difficulties. All of this marked our faith. During the war, when the state confiscated all church structures because of the UNITA MPLA conflict, a temporary school was set up here. Guerrillas were near, and battles took place all around the mission. The people felt threatened, and so they ran away. The mission was then demolished and abandoned. Nearly 20 people died in one day during that attack.
With the outbreak of the Civil War, many missionaries, particularly Portuguese, were forced to leave the country. Many risked their lives and stayed in a country engulfed by war. Father Gil was one of those who remained with the people of Wakokongo for the whole duration of the Civil War.
Our cars served here to help. For example, to transport the ill to hospital. Thank God our car never drove over a landmine. One had to be careful of landmines, though catechists always warned us about them. I've been in Angola since 1982. I am Portuguese, and I came here with a desire to be good, in a way to compensate for what the settlers did. Independence was something that was worth supporting, something we can thank God for, who allowed it to happen. We quite simply believed that we had to help the people. There was an actual need, and thank God, God protected us, and we were not abducted, unlike many others here. There was a period when many people fled this place because of the war. But brothers, above all Father Gil, always remained here. They stayed because of their faith, in spite of the consequences that could have befallen them. There was a time when you couldn't travel in a car here. However, Father Gil had a bicycle from the days when you could ask for one, and he traveled on that. I was often on farms at that time, and I would meet him riding on his way to celebrate a christening or a mass. That I remember very distinctly. Attacks on villages began. They were burned, which was very dangerous. Attacks on roads, cars were attacked, landmines. Then a wave of abductions followed, mainly for propaganda reasons. The point was to show that the guerrillas were strong and that they could do whatever they wanted. During the war, our mission was located 280 kilometers from Luanda, whilst we had to go for everything that we needed to Luanda. For food, oil, diesel, there was nothing here. Every trip was a problem. Will we get through or not? We traveled in a military column that day, made up of over 80 lorries. For some unknown reason, they insisted I drive first. The attack came as soon as I had driven past, and all 80 vehicles were behind me. All were burned, as they stood, all of them. On my way back a week later, it wasn't a pretty sight, especially the stench of yet unburied bodies.
A total of 47 missionaries lost their lives during the war at the hands of both sides of the conflict. Among those killed were Bishop Mbanza Congo and Alfonso Mteka. 68 missionaries and sisters were abducted by the guerrillas and held as hostages for months.
Nós temos padre que justamente foi assassinado na estrada.
We had a priest who was quite simply murdered on the street, murdered because he was known for his work with the young. We had two priests who found their end on the open road. They were on their way to serve communities. They were easily identifiable as priests, yet nonetheless killed. Not to mention the many catechists who were massacred. Why? Because they told the truth.
Falaram a verdade. Quem vive bem a sua fé,
He who lives his faith honestly is a nuisance. He who follows Jesus Christ is truly a nuisance, because he offers the truth, because he carries out acts of love. And so, if someone carries hate in his heart, then such a person must be a nuisance. Because the Church's stance during the war was always geared to reminding everybody that the situation was not normal, that it was evil, that was a very difficult stance, but the Church changed during that time, and its voice became ever more prophetic. The role of the Catholic Church during the Angolan War was fundamental. The social role, the spiritual support, the human, the humanitarian. Churches were always filled to capacity with people. The Church preached many homilies in support of beginning the process of Angolan reconciliation. It took some time. There were moments when the government was not prepared to accept the Catholic Church's role in this matter. Nonetheless, what is certain, and what I believe, is that its role was fundamental and contributed to the achievement of social peace.
A igreja era mais moralizar bocadinho as pessoas.
The Church moralized people. Moralization, education, and above all else, social assistance and the avoidance of misunderstandings instigated by soldiers. I know that words spoken by priests were listened to, even by those from the other side. Here the Church played a major role.
Very significant for Angolans was Pope John Paul II's visit in 1992 during the celebrations commemorating 500 years of Christianity in that country. The pilgrimage took place shortly after the signing of a peace agreement between the warring factions at a time of great hope for a permanent peace.
Pielgrzymka Jana Pawła to był coś niesamowitego.
He was here for 10 days. It was his longest African pilgrimage, and he visited many cities. There was great enthusiasm, an incredible enthusiasm, though there were shortages of everything. Above all else, Christians gained self-confidence and great comfort from the Pope's visit to a country that was dangerous, for dangerous it was indeed.
jest niebezpieczny.
And yet that Pope came here and lived with these people.
I
There were many meetings.
papież, tutaj z tymi
There were over 1
ludźmi
million people
żył.
at the main mass in Luanda.
Spotkania w Luandzie było około 1 miliona ludzi na mszy centralnej.
Papa realmente meu pai da igreja.
The Pope was indeed the father of the church. My father. He left good pointers. Hearts nearly burst from love. The Pope was truly a Pope of peace. Even today, seeing his photographs, I feel the emotions and the joy, nearly as if he was with us.
Fique para sempre no passado este período doloroso de destruição. Vence as tentações que induzem a prolongar o conflito armado, fonte de ruínas e de inúteis sofrimentos. Nunca mais a guerra, nunca mais a guerra. Passa Angola para sempre.
Depois das eleições,
The war broke out once again after the elections and proved to be even crueler than the previous one.
do que a anterior.
Angola's civil war finally ended in 2002 after a further 10 years of fighting and the death of UNITA's guerrilla leader Jonas Savimbi. According to estimates, at least 500,000 Angolans were killed in the 27-year-old, practically uninterrupted conflict. There is no way of estimating the suffering of the countless maimed by landmines, the orphans, widows, and the 4 million refugees and people internally displaced.
Esta guerra, quer dizer, foi desastrosa.
That war was terrible. There is a memorial cemetery not far from here, where nearly 7,000 people who died during the fighting lie buried. This city was quite simply a nightmare. Bodies were buried here, in the town. Later came the time of disinterment, when remains were removed to the memorial cemetery, during which time people began to cry.
Dwie generacje ludzi, którzy nie
Two
znają
generations knew no
pokoju.
peace.
Ma się dziwić, że w Angolii
No
jest
reason
bardzo
to be
duży
surprised that
procent
crime rate
przestępczości
percentages are high,
napadów.
attacks
No bo
frequent,
ci ludzie w
because
sumie nie
these people
wiedzieli,
knew
nie
no other
umieli
way
nic
of life
innego robić, jak
except
tylko
to fight.
walczyć. Zabić człowieka to nie ma co.
To kill a human being is no problem, though there is no benefit to be gained.
Jest jakiś pożytek.
To kill a chicken is at least useful, one
To
lunch.
jest cała moralność zniszczona
And that
przez
is the
wojnę.
sum of all morality, destroyed by the war. They were taught to kill.
Może nie zdawali sobie sprawy. Byli
Perhaps they were not
łapani do
aware what
wojska
that is.
jako młodzi ludzie.
They were caught, incorporated into the army as young people, teenage boys, without any preparation.
Po prostu tylko
They simply taught them how to shoot.
The war also left in its wake 80,000 civilians wounded by anti-personnel and anti-tank mines. Angola continues to number amongst the most mined countries in the world. According to Angolan government estimates, over 7 million landmines remain undiscovered and armed, and over 2 million Angolans live in mined areas. Angola was supposed to destroy all its landmines by the year 2013. However, according to the Landmine Impact Survey Organization, at the present clearance rate in which many international organizations are involved, clearing Angola of landmines will take another 130 years.
Este aqui é o perímetro do campo minado.
This area is a minefield. These areas are places we have cleared of landmines. This red symbol that you can see signifies that an area that was once mined has been cleared and the landmines destroyed. You can also see agricultural areas. This symbol indicates an accident. A young boy, in search of crickets, walked onto a mine and died as a result. We managed to destroy 2 anti-personnel and 3 anti-tank landmines during 95 workdays.
The effects of a long drawn-out war are not only the hundreds of thousands of lives lost, those crippled and maimed, the uncharted minefields and the destroyed infrastructure, but also the social consequences which are even harder to mend: a 30% illiteracy rate, a weak health system, corruption, unemployment, violence, as well as the ever-widening gap between rich and poor.
Hoje a gente que faz as refeições todas.
There are people today who eat caviar for lunch, whilst others cannot buy a loaf of bread for their children. The greatest problem is, however, not poverty, but the lack of future prospects for the next day. It seems unthinkable that today a man who steals a chicken can spend 5, 6, 7 years in prison, whilst others embezzle tankers and walk free. There are policemen who kill today, and they are free tomorrow. The Catholic Church is more than ever called upon to talk about these injustices. The moat that separates the rich from the poor is ever wider. In effect, some, very few, are extremely rich, whilst the rest, who make up the majority, continue to live for under $1 or $2 a day. The impatience of the needy might lead to an explosion of resentments that continue to exist. It is therefore not possible to say that Angola's peace is stable.
The Catholic Church, that makes up 55% of the population, also had to tackle the aftermath of war. Its organizational structure had been destroyed. There are parishes of 20,000 faithful that have only one priest. In many places the faith only survived thanks to the selfless dedication of thousands of lay catechists who led often far-flung communities, evangelized them, and provided spiritual support in the faith. Most church and parish buildings were demolished, including homes and mission schools. Without the support of the Universal Church, it is difficult to imagine that these ruins and weakened communities could ever be rebuilt.
The cathedral was completely destroyed, and the seminary was without a roof, doors, windows, greatly damaged. Later still, the whole bishopric was burned, because the bishop was kidnapped by the guerrillas. They even laid landmines to blow up the walls. The church was desecrated. They did everything in church when communism was very strong. They threw crosses outside. In one church they destroyed the tabernacle. It was said that they fired upon it. They set up their headquarters in the church in the mission grounds. Our homes are all practically destroyed here. From the beginning, we were greatly assisted by aid to the church in need. I can say that 60% of churches still need to be rebuilt. The church grows because of its universal solidarity. I would very much like the Angolan church to grow on its own, even though it will never be able to forego outside help from the universal church. At every step of the way, we ask for ever more missionaries to come here. Angola needs evangelization.
Many important pointers for the country and a church struggling to deal with the consequences of war and the challenges of freedom were set out by Pope Benedict XVI during his visit to the country in March 2009. He was received by the Angolan people with great enthusiasm.
The Pope showed great courage by pointing out the government's responsibility for social justice. We cannot be lacking in our prophetic function based on an ability to point out to those responsible for some of the plagues that must end, such as the plague of injustice, the plague of corruption, the plague of unemployment. The Church must courageously continue to expose things that do not work. I believe that Pope Benedict XVI's visit was, at that moment, a blessing for Angola. The Angolan people, and more especially the Church, needed an impulse. Somebody with a moral authority, such as the Pope, to help them lead the nation as it took its first steps that will determine the direction of the country's development. Society reacts differently ever since the Pope's visit. It is a society that has a voice, which was not the case in 1992, when people were still frightened. Everything began to change after the Pope's visit.
Visiting Angola, Benedict XVI underlined that unity, real unity, can only bear fruit if preceded by a conversion, a transformation of hearts, and a new way of thinking sourced in the power of God's love. Despite the wounds of the past that Angola continues to struggle with, Angola's church may serve as an example of the real resurrection, a paschal faith that endured by the cross, a faith that forgives and seeks unity, a faith that is innocent, enthusiastic, and truly full of African joy.
Revenge leads to nowhere. One should repay bad with good. Only then will we be able to move forward.
Christians' great strength is prayer, a constant prayer for peace in our country. The Church should work for unity, to assure justice and thereby bring peace to Africa, in such a way seeing that we can thereby be agents, harbingers of the light and salt of the earth. This is not easy, my dears, it is not, but such is our program. That is the challenge that we face before us in order to ensure that Angola and other African countries, as well as the rest of the world, never again need to experience what we experienced in our country for over 40 years.
Colonial.